Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of a new MMA show. I am your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of yummy things with microphones because I'm a ring announcer and cage announcer. And I'm joined this week, as I always am, by my two buds in MMA fandom. And both of whom I would say bring MMA punditry to new heights. And I said that like it's the first time I've ever said it.
Yeah, I liked it.
Introducing to you first, in New York, he is Mark Prio. What's up, bud?
What's up, people? How's everyone doing? A bit of a crazy week. We're scrambling a little bit to be ready for this episode. We'll touch on this later, but we couldn't even find these fucking Bellator fights. So if you're listening to this, and I will say this again later because I want anyone to hear this that might be able to help us. If you know where to find these fights, leave us a comment because I would love to be able to watch them, but it has proven to be quite a challenge. So yeah, a little bit of issues coming into this episode, but we are ready to go. And Omar has big hair today. I've just noticed. Look at that hair.
Yeah, he does.
It's very big hair. Your man hasn't like trimmed or anything. It is. I've just been lazy. There's no excuse.
All right.
Once my hair starts getting in my mouth, it's not great.
Taking that segue.
I actually got to close my door so my voice doesn't carry.
Taking that segue. Introducing in Florida, the Nicaragua Nightmare, Omar Artola. What's up, buddy?
What's up, bud?
Dude, just take a scissor and just cut along your lip so you don't.
No,
your mustache.
I totally do it all the time. I just
okay.
have it. I just have it. Yeah. So I'm glad we didn't record yesterday because yesterday I did a class, the second half of my classes from 5:30 to 6:30. And then one of the guys from the fight team was like, yo, you want to hold pads for me for like 4 rounds? And I was like, sure, why not? And so he went hard for 4 rounds. And then one of the other guys from the fight team was like, hey, can you hold for me for a few rounds? And I was like, sure, why not? And so I held for him for another 3 rounds. And at one point, I was so tired, I couldn't even hold the pads up anymore during the round. So I just put the pads on the top of my head and just told him, like I had a belly pad on, and I just told him, don't stop throwing hooks. Just go. Just power hooks all day. And I was just eating hooks for,
damn, dude,
I don't know, 45 seconds, maybe something like that.
Damn.
Oh, it was the worst. The worst. Good times, though. I really enjoy that. It was fun.
Well, boys, we have a little bit to get to on this episode. We're going to talk about the fights from this past weekend's UFC Fight Night, Ribas versus Namajunas. We're going to talk about all these fights, going from the main event all the way down. We're going to talk about Bellator action that went down this past weekend, Bellator's Champions Series 1. It's part of this new merger with PFL. And then we're gonna look ahead to this coming weekend's UFC Fight Night. Blanchfield versus Fiorot. Is it Fiorot Blanchfield or Blanchfield Fiorot? I think Blanchfield's on the A side.
Yeah, she is. Dude, my computer is having a heart attack right now.
My God, Mike, it's not just you.
It's okay. My son is screaming. My wife is on it. That's okay. Of course, once we start recording, I'm hearing my son like scream crying, but my wife's here, so thanks, honey. Okay, before we get into any fight talk, guys, let's get this show on the road and thank our audience. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, thank you so much. Leave us a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, if you've been liking what you've been watching, if you've been watching a few of our clips and videos, and of course, drop a comment down below. If you like or dislike any of our takes, we want to hear it down below, and we want to hear your takes on these results, these upcoming fights. We love that lively MMA banter, as always. Keep it classy. If you want audio only, we got you there. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, find us on social media. You can find us on all the relevant platforms at @andnew_MMA. MMA show. Okay, let's get right into it. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Thug Rose Namajunas, who this past weekend defeated Amanda Ribas by a unanimous decision in a 5-round fight that was the headliner of UFC Fight Night, Ribas versus Namajunas. It went down, of course, at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Mark, start us off. Give us your take on how this fight played out. Thug Rose got it done. Her first big win at 125 pounds, turning the rising Ribas back.
Yeah, this was, it was a good fight. It was a little bit of a strange fight because it felt like neither one of them could truly find a way to shine in it. I thought they both looked good overall. They both fought a smart fight where neither of them really gave the other any openings to exploit. Even on the ground, everything was just stifled by whoever was on bottom. So it wasn't the most exciting fight ever. I feel like neither girl really had a chance to show out, but they both fought well. From Amanda's side of things, she had her first main event. She hung with a former champ in Rose Namajunas and even had some people who thought she should have won on the cards, which I didn't quite get. But my point is, despite the loss, not a terrible night for her. And from Rose's perspective, she got herself a win at 125. Now, granted, it was against a girl who also spent a lot of time at 115, so maybe not quite a true flyweight, but nonetheless, got a win, and she needed that. And she did look good. She was ready for the jiu-jitsu of Ribas. She controlled the grappling positions for the most part, I thought, outside of round 3. It seemed like she was a step ahead. And her timing was as sharp as ever. She still sees every little movement and can take advantage in the striking. She was slipping and countering beautifully. But I got to say, I did think she looked slow. I'm pretty comfortable in saying that was the slowest Rose Namajunas we've ever seen. So I don't know if that was an age thing or if it's a weight thing. I guess maybe we'll find out a little more next time we see her in there. But I thought it was noticeable compared to her normal self. But it didn't stop her from getting a W. I do think it was the right decision. I don't really get the people trying to say Ribas won that fight. I thought Rose won 1, 2, 4, and maybe even 5. So I was glad it went her way, but I thought it was well fought from both girls, and obviously a big win for Rose at this point.
Omar, bringing you in here, Omar, what were your thoughts of this fight over the course of 5 rounds?
I was also, throughout the fight, I should say, even from round 1, Ribas getting up and putting her hands up as if she had dominantly won that round was very odd to me. And I'm sure it was, we've seen fighters in the past just sort of do that as a way to either hype themselves up, keep themselves in the fight, play with the judges' feelings and things like that as sort of a strategic move and things like that. But it's just always very odd to me when you clearly didn't win the round. I feel like that works better in closer rounds, if you're trying to game the system to a certain extent, but like whiffing in a round and then putting your hands up seems really odd to me. And she did it every round. I'm not even sure if she did it at the end of the 3rd round, which I thought she won, which was also very weird to me. But I thought she clearly lost rounds 1, 2, 4, and 5. I didn't think that there was any debate. I was actually kind of confused as to why there was such a debate. There is no debate that it was a scrap. There is no debate that it was, a war to a certain extent. Neither one of these ladies backed off of each other, but I thought Rose got the better of her in most exchanges, especially on the ground. I think Ribas tried to do a lot of things that worked for her in a lot of the other situations with lower level competition that Rose took advantage of. The head and arm drag is one of them. The head and arm drag is one of those things that if you don't do it right, there's a lot of vulnerabilities. A lot of that placement of where that drag comes from. If you're too low, the center of gravity will just let you get flipped over. If you're too high, they can escape out the back door. There's a lot of things about that drag that if you don't do it right, gets you messed up. And Rose took advantage of it a couple of times, early and later on in the fight as well. And I think especially with somebody like Ribas, who we've seen utilize that technique over and over again, when you get to these high and elite levels, if they can nullify one of those techniques that works for you that well, you then become not only predictable, but easy to react to and easy to capitalize on. And I think Rose was able to do that throughout the fight. Third round, I thought was the round that she clearly dropped. And she did look like there was she did look slower. I didn't think she looked any less skilled, though. I still think she looked like the Rose of old in that sense. Very in and out. I thought we had somebody in Ribas who was able to bring the fight out of Rose as well. We didn't have that Carla Esparza counter fighter on counter fighter kind of situation. So I thought it was a great fight. I just didn't think Ribas won any of those rounds other than the third round.
I still don't think that Ribas' stock necessarily fell on this loss. If anything, I think her stock rose as well, at least a little bit, because she showed that she can hang in there with a world champ. And she did not look bad at all. She was not blown out of the water. She wasn't blown out.
No.
And she held her own.
No, I agree. That's kind of what I was trying to say about her. But yeah, I think an aspect of this fight that made it weird where some of these people think Ribas was doing more than she did. And I think even the UFC strike counter thing, whatever their name for it is, was falling for this in a way, because you would see these counts and it was like Ribas is way ahead. Meanwhile, you're watching it and you're like, no, she isn't. There was a lot of shots that were hitting like Rose's shoulder and like Rose was blocking or slipping. And these are all, it seems like adding up for Ribas. Meanwhile, like every shot Rose landed, Ribas's head was snapping backwards. So it was just, it was a big difference in the way things were landing, even though the numbers seemed to be saying, oh, look, Ribas is really outstriking her.
And I can tell you from a defense perspective, having a shot land on either your elbow or on your shoulder or something, something that you can react off of, because there's a lot of times that in a fight perspective, you're trained to react off of an impact. It's like a catch and shoot kind of situation. So you're catching a shot somewhere, whatever, and then you're reacting to it, uppercut, cross, whatever you want to do. But like a lot of those situations are necessary. So I feel like to lose points for something where you've defended properly seems like not a good situation.
Yeah, that's interesting for sure. Let's talk about where these ladies are going to go from here. Let's talk about Thug Rose Namajunas first. So her record now improves to 12-6. She's now 10-5 in the UFC. That was her 5th decision win as a pro. And she snaps a 2-fight losing skid. She lost in the title fight to Esparza and then lost a decision to Manon Fiorot. The Esparza fight, once again, was a split decision loss. And now back to 125 pounds for another shot. And she gets the W over the very tough Ribas. Mark, where do you see Thug Rose going from here at 125?
So I think there's a few different paths for her. And she mentioned 2 of them. But it's actually option 3 that I am going with. She mentioned the loser of Blanchfield and Fiorot, which is certainly possible. She mentioned Macy Barber, which is certainly possible. But to me, I think that is where they should go, that Macy should be fighting the loser of Blanchfield and Fiorot. And I would like to see option 3, which I've said on here a couple times before, which is Natalia Silva. I think Rose and Natalia is a fantastic fight.
Yeah, man, that's a great fight. Omar, any other thoughts on Thug Rose?
I don't hate that. I did like the Macy Barber fight. I can't say I really don't. I love that fight. The Natalia Silva fight, though, is a good fucking fight.
Yeah, man.
And it's not like it doesn't make sense. I mean, they're right there in the rankings. So it's
I actually didn't even look. Where did they debut Rose? Has anyone looked?
7. She's right above Natalia Silva. It's
Natalia's
like
8,
the perfect fight. Yeah.
Makes
Fantastic. Okay, let's talk about Amanda Ribas. Back in the loss column after defeating Luana Pinheiro back in November, now losing to the former champion Thug Rose Namajunas, her record falls to 12-5 and 7-4 now in the UFC. That was her 4th career loss by decision. Omar, give me the name of who you think Ribas could match up well with next.
Well, Tracy Cortez and Amanda Ribas were matched up way back when in 2022, and that fight got canceled. So I think this is probably a good time to revisit that situation there. I I think the striking is interesting from Tracy Cortez in that aspect. I think Ribas, I think, likes to make us think her striking is legit, but she does a lot more moving than she does successful strikes. But her ground game can be a real problem if she gets a hold of somebody and gets on top. Rose obviously exploited a lot of situations in her ground game, but we have to see if Tracy Cortez is on that level. So I love that fight.
Mark, your thoughts?
I do like that choice if she stays at 125. I'll give you someone at 115 just because I know that she had said in her last fight when she went back down to 115 and beat Luana Pinheiro that she had tried 125 and she felt like she wanted to make another run at 115. But then this Rose thing came across her plate, and obviously you get a chance to fight Rose in a main event, you're going to take it. So sure. I'm kind of assuming that she's going to go back toward this plan of 115. Who honestly knows with her, because she does seem to bounce between both quite often. But I'll take that route since Omar covered 125, and I will say the loser of this upcoming fight at UFC 300 between Jessica Andrade and Marina Rodriguez. And I know she fought Marina already, but it was like 3+ years ago, and I think it could work at this point to run it back, even if that's who it ends up being. But I think either of those are cool fights.
Nice.
Yeah.
Like it. Love it. Gotta have it. Okay. Let's see. What is next for this fight night card? Let's go down the list here. The heavyweights occupied the octagon during the co-main event. Let me pull it up here. I lost it. What the fuck? One moment. Reloading. Here we go. Karl Williams defeated Justin Tafa by a unanimous decision in a 3-round co-main. Omar, start us off. Give us your thoughts on how these two heavyweights clashed in the UFC octagon this Saturday night.
This was a frustrating fight. Justin Tafa was quite obviously the better striker, was cracking Karl Williams with everything Karl Williams could handle just about. Credits Karl Williams for not eating shit in that fight and going down. But I mean, he was getting touched up quite a bit. And then Justin Tafa, in all of his raging glory, decided to throw a knee in the middle of this, and in almost Kimbo Slice versus Roy Nelson style, fucked up an entire fight he had. Karl Williams took him down to the ground, never let him back up for that round. Second round, kind of a lot of the same as far as the ground control from Karl Williams. And the third round, we're like, Justin Tafa's got to get this one, man. He's got to get in there. And again, cracking Karl Williams, piecing him up, doing some work. Karl Williams is trying to keep his shit together, trying to find him. At one point, I think his eyes were closed and just zombie walking, trying to hold on to somebody. Could have been the ref, could have been Justin Tafa. He had no idea. But going forward. And then Justin Tafa throws a head kick that just... No one asked him to throw any kicks there, right? He had a beautiful... If there was one kick he should have just stuck with the entire fight, it was a left body kick. He was throwing a left body kick from a southpaw position that was money. You could literally hear the sound for miles every time that shit hit. It was money. He didn't need to throw dick else, but he's here throwing knees that don't need to get thrown, that gets him taken down. Throws a head kick that throws him completely off balance, ends up on the ground, and never gets back up, and gives away the third round at that point. And so Justin Tafa loses when he didn't really lose. It was a frustrating fight for your boy. It's very frustrating.
Okay, Mark, your frustrated thoughts. Yeah, I mean, the wrestling was obviously the X factor in this fight, and it carried Karl Williams through. Justin Tafa had not been taken down coming in. We wondered last week if it was just because he hadn't really fought opponents who were looking to take him down as their option one, and now we know that is the case because he certainly got taken down quite a few times in this fight. And thank God he can get taken down because, as Omar alluded to, Karl Williams was eating some friggin' shots on the feet. And honestly, more than he ever should have. I don't know why he was so willing at the start of every round to get into these exchanges with Justin Tafa. Like, it really seemed like every time he stepped out there, he was like, I'm going to try the striking first and see how that works out. And like it was never going to work out. But he walked that fine line. But thankfully for him, every time he got hurt, he was able to find a takedown because Tafa would get overzealous, or he would just kind of, I don't want to say panic, but he would just go into like desperation mode. And he's a very strong guy. And he would like, that's why he was kind of getting some of these when he would just like grab a hold and push forward. You can see this in really all his fights thus far. He kind of runs dudes over. Like it's like football tackle type takedowns at times. He's just got like really strong legs. He gets a lot of drive behind his shots. So even in these times where he was like a little bit hurt and panicked, there's just a lot of drive. There's a lot of push behind his takedowns. And he was getting Tafa off balance again and again. So he got it done. He clearly out-wrestled him every time they were on the ground. It was all Karl Williams. So yeah, it's a little hard to tell just how good he is at this point. I would like to see him dial in his game plan a bit more. But with all that said, it's 3 fights and 3 clear wins that are not even arguable. So can't hate on it too much.
That's true, man. That's true. Okay, let's talk about where these big boys might be going from here. Mark, your thoughts on where Karl Williams goes on the heels of this win. Just real quick, he has now improved his record to 10-1 and still undefeated under the UFC banner at 3-0 with the UFC. Mark?
Omar's going to love this one. I know Andrei Arlovski is still hanging around looking for a fight.
Bro.
He's not done yet. In all the matchups that we do, I haven't felt like anyone was the right person to really give Andre. I kind of think Karl Williams is that guy. I think that Andre has the right amount of veteran savvy, of movement, of potential takedown D if it's not the right type of shot, of potential danger in the hands. I just think it's the kind of test that Karl Williams needs to show he can get past at this point. And I don't think it's a terrible fight for Andre. So if he wants one, I'm giving him one.
Omar, your thoughts?
I'd rather go in the direction of somebody like a Shamil Gaziev, somebody who I think will also give him some problems. I think in the getting him down to the ground situation, and Gaziev will crack you in the face. So I think that's a good fight.
I almost picked it.
You know what I like? I like that Karl Williams doesn't have a nickname, and he has a man's name. He's just Karl Williams. He doesn't need a nickname because he's Karl, the adult Williams. The
Karl
adult
with a
male.
K.
Karl with a K, no less. Okay, let's talk about the man with a nickname, the bad man, Justin, not Junior Tafa. Omar, give me a thought about where this fighter out of New Zealand could end up next.
I'll tell you where I don't want to see him fight next is Muhammad Usman. And Usman just lost on that card, man. And they're like probably in the same arena, same number system with each other. So that's totally a possibility. And I would hate every moment of that.
Why would you hate it?
Because
Justin, that's what I'm going with.
It's the same thing we just saw. I don't want to see that shit. If there's a fight that I would be more entertained by, I feel like it would be a fight with Chris Barnett. I don't really know what Chris Barnett is doing right now. I feel like he was just matched up and then he had to pull out of something.
He's had a few pullouts, yeah.
But if we could make that fight happen, I feel like that would be a fun fight.
Dude,
his fight was
Chris
with
Barnett.
His fight was with Muhammad Usman. That was the fight that got canceled.
Oh, right. Yeah, right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark.
Yeah, I was debating between those two men. So, I was going to say before, as a lead into that, Justin Tafa, as much as we love the guy and we've seen him have these great knockouts, he has failed to take that next step. Like he's 500 in the UFC and his wins are Austin Lane, Parker Porter, Harry Hunsucker, and Juan Adams. Like he hasn't gotten one to really move him up in this division. So he's kind of still hovering down there. And yeah, I think Omar nailed it. I think those two guys fit the bill. I was going to go with Mo Usman, who also lost on this card. because it's a similar type of test and you'd like to see Justin Tafa figure out how to pass that type of test. I think Mo is a little bit less of a dominant wrestler than Karl Williams is.
I would agree with that.
So that's why I'm kind of intrigued to say, like, okay, Justin, show us you can pass this one. And, you know, it works the other way for Mo as well. So, yeah, that's where I'll go.
Do you think Muhammad Usman would be more successful if he dropped a weight class?
I mean, I've kind of always thought it ever since Tough. I didn't even know.
Oh, really?
I shouldn't say I've always thought it. I've always wondered where he was going to choose to fight is what I should say. Like the whole time he was on Tough, I was like, if he makes it to the UFC, I wonder if he's going to be a light heavyweight. In terms of where I think he'd be better, I don't know. I'm not sold on him, man. I'm just not. I bet against him this weekend.
His wrestling has never really been exceptional to me, and I feel like going down a weight class, I don't think is going to make it better. I think it'll make it worse, to be honest.
Yeah, and dudes are going to be quicker strikers down there.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, let's move on. Let's see. Okay, fun one. Still on the main card here, UFC Fight Night. At 185 pounds, Edmen Shahbazyan gets it done over AJ Dobson in the middleweight division. Shahbazyan back in the win column after losing to Fluffy Hernandez back in May of 2020. No, excuse me. Yeah. May of last year. May 20th. I read that wrong. I apologize. Shahbazyan does it with style, though, finishing AJ Dobson in the very first round, the official time 4:33 of round one. Omar, give us your thoughts of how this fight played out.
I know this fight didn't go on for very long, but this was very much a comeback fight for Edmen Shahbazyan because he was getting fucked up early on. For sure. I mean, he got touched real quick. Give him credit though, man. That dude kept his feet under him. You could see his body wanted to shake it, but he kept his feet under him, kept his composure, and weathered a nice early storm. And man, did he come back and just lay AJ Dobson down. I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was a fight that Edmen Shahbazyan needed. He caught the submission right at the end there, right as they were coming up. But I mean, the damage was all hands. It was all damage. It was all hands. It was all ground and pound. And credit for Shahbazyan for not letting him up. It was a great comeback performance from him. He needed that.
Mark, your thoughts on the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, Omar kind of summarized it beautifully right there, but this was a crazy 5 minutes, and it certainly was a hell of a comeback from Edmen. He was in trouble early. AJ came out looking so much faster, which is not really something I had anticipated, but the hand speed was a huge problem for Edmen to start that fight. He got hurt, on the feet 2 different times. He pushed through it and got a takedown to give himself a breather, but even there, he ends up getting out wrestled for the most part. And then he gets up and they reset on the feet and it's over just like that. They exchange. It didn't even look like it was that clean of a left hand, but you could see it kind of hit Dobson behind the ear and it knocked his equilibrium. Yeah. And he backed up to the cage and Edmen just fucking pounced and poured it on. Like you could tell he was not letting that moment pass. He was like, I'm doing this right now or it's not happening.
Yep.
And he did. He landed some bombs. He eventually put Dobson all the way out. And yeah, it's a huge win for him. He really, really needed it, and he got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Great stuff from Shahbazyan. I was wrong about that. What didn't I take? I think I took Dobson.
Yes.
I mean, you weren't that far from being right, to be honest. I mean, Dobson had done some good work up until he got caught. I mean, that was just the reality of the fight. It was a tumultuous fight, chaotic, and Edmen Shahbazyan just won the coin toss that night.
So Edmen, the Golden Boy Shahbazyan, fighting out of Las Vegas, his record now as a professional violence doer climbs up to 13-4, 6-4 in the UFC with this win over AJ Dobson. Mark, give us the name of who you think Shahbazyan should be fighting next at middleweight.
So I said it last week. I said that if Edmen won this fight, I really thought him and Gerald Meerschaert would be an awesome fight, and I stand by that. That's where I'm going to go. I think they're a really interesting test for each other. They both pose a lot of problems for the other to have to deal with.
Yeah, that's a great point. Omar, your thoughts?
That's actually that's obviously a much better fight from him from a rankings perspective. I was kind of more in line with Roman Kopylov, having just come off the loss to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Stylistically, that fight intrigues the hell out of me.
It's a fun one too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Man, absolutely.
Someone dies in that fight, I think.
100%, and probably from some kick somewhere to somebody, like body piece.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
Spoilers before we go to this next part. AJ Dobson has officially been released from the UFC, so we don't have to.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Oh, yeah. I did not know that. Good to know. Yeah. We do not need to match him up, but say happy trails and best of luck in the rest of his career, wherever it may go.
By the way, to fight, what's I don't know what Edmen is at in most people's world rankings. I think in mine, let me see for reference. Coming into this fight, I had Edmen at 22. And he just almost finished the number 22 middleweight in the first round. And instead, he is losing his job. Like, that's fucking tough, man.
Yeah, it's like, go somewhere else. Go fight for LFA or whoever else. Mm-hmm. Or APFC. Let's go.
APFC.
Let's go, baby.
Or you could be like Sam Alvey out here, go to Karate Combat and become a champion.
Yeah, man. Sam Alvey.
Let's go, Sam Alvey. Spoilers. We're going to get into that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then let's move on. This fight. I am very excited to talk about this result. In the bantamweight division, Payton Talbott defeats Cameron Saaiman. He finishes him in the second round. The official time only 21 seconds into the second round for Payton Talbott. Omar, give me your thoughts.
Don't give me shit about my anime picks. That's what I'm going to tell you. I told you. If kid watches Bleach, he's a problem. Period. All right? That's just what it is.
What a sentence.
It's just it. Kid's fantastic, man. I was really high on him the first time I saw him. The tattoo definitely brought me in. I'm not gonna lie, but I stayed for the content. And kid's very, very skilled. This one though, I thought really put him on the map. I mean, the shots were super accurate, super heavy, timed so insanely well. And I mean, he made Cameron Saaiman look like he wasn't one of the hottest prospects that the UFC had on the way up. He really made Cameron Saaiman look like he was a can. And I think that's crazy. Just all the way around. I thought the whole situation was crazy. His performance was absolutely on point. I think this kid, if nothing else, man, is going to be a lot of fun for a good while.
Mark, your thoughts on Payton Talbott staying undefeated, now 8-0 with this great, very impressive win over another hot prospect in Cameron Saaiman.
So people who watched last week may remember that I said I didn't feel like I knew enough about Talbott yet, and that it was very possible that I come out of this fight saying, oh, wow, Payton Talbott is really good. Well, oh, wow, Payton Talbott is really good. Mm-hmm. He looked disgusting. He just put a huge spotlight on himself with that performance. It was complete dominance. It was a drubbing. You can tell that he has it because as most guys who have it do, you can see the calmness that he's able to fight with in what's obviously a very crazy environment. It's very evident. He looks like he is in control of every second of every movement. He does enter like he's a little bit invincible a lot, which scares me. He kind of just walks forward with his hands down and his head kind of out there. So I get it. You're young. You haven't lost. Is he undefeated? I actually forget he's undefeated. He is, right? Okay. So yeah, you're young. You haven't lost. You feel a little bit invincible, and it's part of the vibe, and it's part of what is driving your success. But I would still like to see him clean that up at least a little as he's moving up these ranks. Like, I get it that it's part of the style, but maybe just a little bit of hands up would be a good thing. But like I said, it is part of the style because he draws you into these spots where he can counter you. And it's working for him right now because he sees everything. His vision and his anticipation of where you're going to go are fantastic. And obviously he's a crazy offensive talent. I mean, that knee alone sounded like a gunshot. I don't know how on earth Cameron Saaiman survived that. What a freaking animal Cameron Saaiman is to endure, everything he did in that fight.
Yeah.
But he couldn't handle the full onslaught by the end. And Payton Talbott is a name to watch. I mean, I don't know if you saw, I saw today, Sean O'Malley talking about Payton Talbott. Like that's how good Payton Talbott looks, that his name is already on the lips of top tier fighters.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you, to me, he looks like he has great size for 135 pounds. He looked to me bigger, more physical than Cameron Saaiman. It seemed like Saaiman, who is a guy who I thought was this firecracker coming in at 135 pounds, he looked like he couldn't do anything to Payton Talbott, power-wise, striking-wise, and Talbot just walked him down, man. And he I think whether it was whoever was on the broadcast, was it I'm blanking on his name, not Anik, what's his name? Fitzgerald. I think he said he was big brothering him, and I was like, that's a freaking perfect word.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you guys, I was a little salty about Payton Talbot because in his UFC debut after Contender Series, he took out a guy that I've announced before, Nick Aguirre. I've announced Aguirre. I've announced his brother, Victor Aguirre, who I'm announcing in 2 weeks at the next APFC. I'm announcing Victor Aguirre's pro debut. And I've gotten to know the both of them and their father and like their family. So they're really good guys. So when Talbot took out Nick Aguirre, I was like, God, a little salty about it. But I'll tell you now, I'm turning because I'm becoming a fan of his, because the man is clearly very skilled and I'm becoming a fan, and he's undeniable. He's undeniable. Yeah. He's only 25 years old. And I learned this week in his interview with Helwani that he only started training at like 17 or 18. MMA was never really on his radar as a kid and as a teenager.
Yeah. Wow.
And he just was like, yeah, I think I want to try that out. And he joined a gym, and now he's a freaking undefeated pro.
But the gem that you might have missed in there, the real gem of that story that I thought was the real takeaway, just especially us fucking semi-old men, is Conor McGregor was his thing. He saw Conor McGregor fight. That was his Chuck Liddell.
Right.
He saw him fight and was like, damn, they really allow this shit? Like, this is something that people get paid to do? Let's go. I want to do this. And we're at that point. You know what I mean? People could talk about Conor McGregor all they want and this, that, and the other. Conor McGregor has single-handedly influenced what is probably going to be an entire generation of fighters at this point.
100%.
And we're seeing
people that have made it to the top already. Like we were just talking about Topuria the other day, clearly influenced by Conor, and there's plenty of others.
It's a wild ride, man. This is all wild.
Did Talbot say? Did he say like? Did he fight in school a lot as a kid? Does he have any kind of background like that?
I don't remember him saying anything like that. No. He was just just saw it on TV, just kind of like I think we all did when we first started watching MMA. It just came on, you know. You got stuck on it. You either got stuck looking at it or you didn't.
Same. That was me. Mark, what were you gonna say?
For your boy Nick Aguirre, is that how you say it, Aguirre?
Aguirre,
sorry. I think that is going to quickly change from, I fucking lost to this dude, Payton Talbot, to, man, one day I had a fight with that guy, Payton Talbot. Like,
yeah.
That's how good he looks.
And there's just levels to this, man. When I announced Nick Aguirre for APFC in his fight, it was a pro fight, and he like embarrassed some guy. Like he was like a league above the guy that he fought. And for Talbot to do what he did to Nick Aguirre, I was like, God damn.
And that's really the difference too about the regional circuit, right? You find guys that are kind of in that little small pool, and then once you start getting into the world rankings, the world pool, shit gets real, man. A really, really different game.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's talk about what could be next for these two guys. Let's start with Payton Talbot. Once again, still only 25 years old, from Las Vegas, born in Las Vegas, fighting out of Reno. still undefeated, now 8-0 as a pro, 1 on Contender Series, and now 2-0 officially under the UFC banner. Mark, give me the name of what you want to see next for this rising dynamo Payton Talbott at bantamweight.
It's interesting, right? Because you could name someone who is like top 20 right now and it wouldn't feel crazy because he just looks that good. But I'm going to try to pump the brakes a little bit, and I'm going to take more of a proper step and have him at least beat someone who's kind of a vet before we like go all the way into the deep end. So I went with Ayman Zahabi, who just got himself a big win over Javid Basharat a few weeks back as the one more fight where he'd have to show out before we throw him fully into the deep end.
Okay. Omar, your thoughts?
I am probably going to throw him a little bit further than that, and I will throw him towards Ronnie Yaya.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I would say that's less further.
You think so?
Less further.
Where do you have him on your rankings?
That's a good question, but I feel like lower than Javid Basharat. Maybe not.
Well, since we don't have
dude,
access...
I literally have them in a line.
Oh,
Ayman, Javid, Hani, or Ronnie in a fucking row. That's funny. All right.
Not that far off.
Yeah,
I guess we are in the same little area.
Look at us.
Okay, let's talk about Cameron Saaiman here. Once undefeated, now lost his first 2 pro bouts back-to-back against Christian Rodriguez and now Payton Talbott. Omar, give me the name of who you want to see Cameron Saaiman fight next at bantamweight.
Yeah, it's a rough one for him, man. I don't think he falls very far from where he's at, but you can't really push him up very much, I think, at this point. I don't know. I get maybe somebody like a Brady Highstand, maybe, or even somebody like a Kyung Ho Kang might be a good one for him, but he can't really move him too much from where he's at right now.
Mark?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the 2 in a row is rough. I want to give him a chance to bounce back, but like I'm not just trying to, he was a fairly big prospect, so I don't want to feel like he shouldn't just be getting a layup here. So I landed on Brad Katona. I feel like they're kind of similar fighters. I feel like that could be a crazy fight.
Okay, going up to featherweight now, Youssef Zalal gets it done, defeats Billy Quarantillo by submission via rear naked choke in the second round. The official time, 150 of round number 2. And their 3-round affair. Let's talk about it. Mark, give us your thoughts of how this fight played out.
So we're sitting here talking about how much Payton Talbott showed out.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Youssef Zalal was basically the same thing. I mean, this dude fought this fight looking like he's a top 10 featherweight in the world. Like Billy Q, anywhere you looked really going into that fight, was ranked in the top 20. And he got worked by Zalal in every aspect of the fight. Zalal was faster. His movement was fantastic. Billy couldn't even really touch him, let alone trap him the way he was trying to.
Yeah.
Zalal's counters were working. He rocked Billy with a beautiful knee. He hit multiple trip takedowns in the fight. And every time they hit the mat, he was in total control and obviously got the finish there. And all this was on short notice for Youssef Zalal as well. So the level up was just crazy. I mean, this dude was in the UFC. He went 3-3-1, kind of bouncing around between bantamweight and featherweight. He comes back short notice at featherweight and does this. Like, it wasn't supposed to be this easy based on the resume, and it was. So clearly Youssef Zalal has leveled up. I know he went 3-0 outside of the promotion to earn his way back here. He is older now. He's in his physical prime. It looks like he has physically filled out compared to the frame that we saw in his first UFC run. He seems like he's much more confident in his own abilities. You could see that in this fight. He was talking in there. He seemed like he really didn't feel like he could lose. And based on what we just saw, he may very quickly become a factor at 145. So I'm curious to see if he can repeat that performance next time out.
Omar, your thoughts on Zalal?
I would agree. I mean, the sentiment that this is kind of similar to the Talbott fight in the showing out, I would have to agree, because for me, Zalal was the one that in my head I was like, I'm not I don't know. I don't know if I felt confident enough, obviously, to pick him against Billy Q. And Billy Q's been there for a minute. And I'm a big Billy Q fan and all that stuff. Zalal put all that to bed. I mean, he really did show out. He looked absolutely fantastic and absolutely dominant in that fight. The shots were insane. The ground control was a problem. Just when you thought Billy Q might have been good getting out of that first round, out of that choke, there he was right back in it in the second round. It was a really, really dominant performance from Zalal. And, you got to imagine he's probably going to get a good spot in his next fight.
So let's talk about that. Zalal, his record now rises to 14-5-1 for the fighter out of Casablanca, Morocco. The Moroccan Devil is his nickname. Dude, Casablanca, what a fucking dope movie. What a classic. Have you guys seen that?
No,
Omar, have you seen that? Please tell me yes. You're the movie guy.
I don't think I have.
Oh, so classic.
No.
His record in the UFC rises to 4-3 with one draw, and he's been on a bit of a tear now as a pro. He's on a 6-fight win streak overall as a professional. And Omar, give us.
Is he damn? I thought he went 3-0. I didn't realize he won that many.
Yeah, he hasn't lost a fight since 2021.
Wow.
Yeah, man. Oh no,
I'm sorry. I think it's crazy.
I'm sorry.
He's 4-3 in the UFC.
I'm wrong. He's 4 in a row. 4 in a row.
Oh, okay. I was right then. 3 in a row.
Yeah, Tapology always keeps the default on Tapology that it merges all of their different combat sport records.
Yeah. For fight records, you got to go Sherdog. Each website has its pros and its cons.
Yes. Okay, Omar, give us the name.
Did you ever look at some of these guys' records and be like, dude, what the hell happened? Because like his first UFC run was decision, like against like just dudes, right? Yep. And then he gets Tapuria'd, he gets decision by Sung Choi, by Sean Woodson in a split decision, which Sean Woodson's like half, like known for. And then just gets cut from the UFC like a random whatever UFC ex-fighter. Yep. And then goes on to murder a bunch of people in a different organization, and then comes back to the UFC in this return debut and absolutely puts the shit beat on Billy Quarantillo. Like, what happened? What happened? Yeah. Something must have switched in that dude somewhere. I mean, because he went on to 3 first-round finishes after this stint of what seemed like long, drawn-out fights. So I don't know what happened, man, but good for him. It's definitely the momentum and the results that you want. Totally. As far as the fights are concerned and what's next for him, I kind of want to give him somebody a little bit further up the rankings just from that performance alone. And I'm just going to double check and make sure he doesn't have anything planned, and I should have done that first, but I didn't. And here we are, and he doesn't. And my choice is Sadiq Youssef.
Okay. Mark, your thoughts?
He's fighting Diego Lopes at UFC 300. Isn't he?
No.
That fight is... Oh, Tapology usually has the goddamn pictures, and they didn't here. You bunch of bitches. All right. The loser of that fight, then. I'll stick with that. I'll still stick with that, though.
I like that. So, yeah, in that vein, I think you could absolutely give Zalal a ranked fighter and nobody would bat an eye after what he just did. Yeah. I guess kind of similar to what I just did with Talbott. I want him to prove it at a similar level and just show that it wasn't purely a matchup-based outcome that we just saw before we jump him into ranked fighters. So I went with Nathaniel Wood.
Nice. Okay, one more now. The main card of this UFC fight night, staying in the featherweight division, Fernando Padilla looking good over Luis Pajuelo, getting it done by a Darce choke in the very first round. The official time, 2:45 of round number 1 for the winner out of Chihuahua, Mexico. Fernando Padilla improving his record to 16-5. Omar, start us off. Give us your thoughts, your impressions on Padilla styling in the first round.
Yeah, man, the kid looks good. He generally looks good. I think for me, the thing I've loved about watching Padilla fight is his reach. When he uses his reach properly, he really is a big problem. And I realize now I got in my mind's eye, I saw part of that finish, and I confused it with the part of the Edmen Shahbazyan AJ Dobson finish, where they both ended up on the cage getting fucked up a little bit, but there was no submission attempt from Shahbazyan. The submission was from Fernando Padilla, which ended up in a Bravo choke against the cage. But that came long after Padilla was putting the beats on Luis Pajuelo. Frankly, the submission choke was just sort of like a here's your way out, my friend.
Yeah.
It started with I think he dropped him with a jab, if I'm not mistaken.
It was like it was a straight.
Was it a straight? Was it from the left? Was it from the southpah?
I'm pretty
positive. Left hand. Okay,
I think it was a left from south. Yes, correct. I feel like that's how I'm envisioning it in my mind, but I'm not gonna say I'm 100% right.
Either way, I mean, once he dropped him, man, I mean, it was the beginning of the end. His instinct to get in there and finish the fight, I thought was fantastic, especially with his ability to do so. He went right down to the ground, continued to put the beats on him, followed him where he needed to go, got him up against the cage, slipped in the choke, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, man. Mark?
Yeah, the first thing I noticed was that I'm forgetting the first name, Luis Pajuelo did not look great for a guy with boxing credentials. So I think I had higher hopes coming into that for how he would look. I guess he was struggling with the reach, and obviously that played a factor in the end because he pressed forward against the cage, and I think he thought the range was good, and he quickly found out that it was not, and he got dropped by the stiff straight that we were just talking about. And then, once Padilla had Pajuelo hurt and in a grappling situation, it was a big advantage for him. And you saw that Pajuelo tried to stand recklessly, and Padilla saw the neck and snatched the darts right away, and it was a quick tap. So Padilla's a little weird. We've had a great one from him in his debut where he finished Arosa. Then we had a really discouraging one where he kind of fought like he didn't care against Kyle Nelson, and now another beautiful one. So we'll see as he goes on here which guy is the norm, but that was a great performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. Okay, let's quickly match them up, and then we'll get into our lightning round here. So Padilla, once again, his record climbs up to 16-5, 3-1, 2-1, excuse me, in the UFC with this win over Pajuelo. Mark, give us the name of who you think he should match up with next at 45.
I went with Sungwoo Choi. I think he's the right level of opponent. I think he brings the right amount of craziness to test Padilla.
Omar?
In the same vein as craziness, I actually went towards a Darren Elkins. I know Mark had a different plan for Darren Elkins a week or so ago. I can't remember who you had him matched up with.
C-Rod, yes, you're right.
Oh, okay. But I do think that this would be a different level of craziness.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Okay, anything you guys want to say about Peru's Luis Pajuelo? Omar?
Where is Pajuelo? He's got to be all the way at the bottom here. Why don't we put him up against this kid who, I'll give you two names just because I think both of these guys are in need of a win. I think everybody in this conversation here is probably going to be in need of a win. But either Dennis I'm going to call him Bazooka because I know that's his nickname, and I'm not going to try to do anything else. So Dennis Bazooka or Blake Builder.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm not sure how they were actually saying it because I didn't catch his fight on Saturday, but the dude that Jarno Aarons beat, I don't know if he says Stephen Wynn or Stephen Nguyen. I know sometimes these guys with this last name say it different ways, but he lost in his debut on Saturday, so I will pair him up with Pajuelo, who also lost his.
I would think it's Gwyn, but maybe not.
Dude, there are three different fighters. Well, sorry, no. There's a poker player who says Win, and then there are two different fighters I know. One says Nguyen and one says Nguyen. So, like, what? I don't fucking know what I'm supposed to say.
Oh, all right. Well, fair enough.
Okay. Lightning round?
So we said we weren't doing a lightning. We said we were just going to do, like, notes.
No lightning round.
Fuck the lightning round. My bad.
But
let's
shout out to Julian Erosa though.
Yeah, I was gonna
Massive
say that's the
finish.
one I was gonna make a note on. That was a
Notables,
crazy fucking fight.
Wow.
notables from the prelims.
The just to talk about that one for a minute, and then Omar, you can probably talk about the bite one if you want, because I never caught that fight.
Yeah.
But Ricardo Ramos has got to be in a dark place right now. I mean, that's back-to-back fights where he was looking great and put his head into a guillotine. Like he's got to be beside himself in a dark room. Like I don't know why he ever even chose to wrestle in the first place, because he had Erosa rocked bad. And I think it was the wrestling that let Julian kind of get his brain back in order. But props to Julian, man. He pushed through adversity. He saw the guillotine. He jumped on it right away. Clearly, he had a crazy squeeze, because it looked like Hamos's head was very set to pop out, and it just wasn't popping out. So that's all Erosa and the squeeze on that. And he gets a big dub in a fight where it looked like he was in big trouble.
Yeah. Okay, Omar, any other thoughts on notes on the prelims?
I mean, just to reference, I guess the
I mean,
bite,
I want to hear about it. I haven't got to watch it yet.
it was weird, because it's one of these things where, like, I wonder if they would have even caught it. It's so he had back control. They were standing and they were against the cage, and Severino had back control, and it almost looked like Severino wanted to get his head in between, like, the armpit and the head, but, like, he couldn't, and you can't really even see him bite him. But it's like, how the fuck did your teeth even get involved in there? Because, like,
So I was going to ask you that. Was his mouth guard not in?
I don't know. I didn't see anything come out. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea how he did that.
I saw the picture of the bite mark on Twitter. And that was my first thought. I was like, was this dude not wearing a mouth guard? Like, how is that even possible?
He was all the way in it too. I mean, usually mouth guards will have, like, one side of your teeth protected and not necessarily the bottom half. Like, there are one-sided mouth guards. Yeah. But, like, the bite mark looked like he got fucking both sides involved in there. Yeah, it was weird, man, because that bite mark was deep. It didn't break skin from what it looked like. But it was weird. It was weird, man. It's a weird choice. I don't understand what the logic is about these things, because obviously they DQ'd him. He got cut. He's probably going to get, I would imagine, somewhat blacklisted a little bit. I doubt promotions are going to be scrambling to sign the kid who bit somebody in the middle of a goddamn fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very odd. Shout out to Andre Lima for getting a tattoo of his bite mark.
Why are we shouting that out? What a weird,
because he made $50,000 off of that bite, and so I feel it.
Yeah, I heard it was a crazy fucking fight. Which, when it happened, when I was getting the updates on my phone, I was on Twitter and I'm seeing all these people being like, "What an incredible fight! These dudes are laying it on the line." Blah blah blah. So when I heard the bite happen, I was like, "Man, it must have just been that they were both like so close to being like out of it, and the dude just like was outside of his mind and was trying to stay alive and bit him." Then I see the replay and he's just chilling in a clinch and bites his fucking arm. Like it wasn't even in any crazy situation.
No, it was a crazy
him against the cage.
It was a crazy fight, and there was a lot of back and forth. I mean, these kids were swinging at each other, absolutely swinging at each other. But it got to a point where it looked like they just got frustrated against the cage. There was some cage pulling involved, and like Toyoni was like telling them to cut the shit off, and so maybe that got, maybe that might have pissed off. What's his name? Severino.
Severino.
Yes.
I'm making that up. No, De Silva, right? No.
Oh, it's Severino. Igor Severino.
Oh, I think he's listed as both in different places. Igor De Silva and Igor Severino.
That doesn't help anybody, man. I don't know.
Am I making that up? I feel like that's
no. You might be right. Anyway, it was a wild situation. The fact that even happened is still crazy.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Okay, let us move on now to Mark. Give us the Bellator summary from this past weekend.
Yeah, so I touched on this in the open of the show. If you were only tuning in at this portion, we are unable to find these Bellator fights. They announced that they had made this deal with Max, HBO Max, which is now just called Max these days. And they were all pumped about it, saying, oh, because there was rumors it was going to be on like DAZN and whatever. And now they're like, it's on HBO Max, which is already in so many households and so many people have this already, and you'll be able to watch all our fights. And they're not fucking on there. So I don't know if they were on there when it was live and they just haven't worked out like on demand to watch the replay yet. But I've searched all over. None of us could find any of these fights. So if you are listening and you know somewhere where these fights can be watched, please let us know. But unfortunately, we couldn't watch them. So I know probably some of you also have not watched, and you're just kind of looking to us to give you the weekly updates on the goings on in MMA. So I will give you those. I'll give you a little brief summary of every fight. I tried to read up. I found some highlights of some of them, so I'll at least give you those. But unfortunately, we have not watched these fights. So again, if you know anywhere, leave us a comment to point us in the right direction. Hopefully, Bellator gets this figured out. But yeah, I'll run it down real quick. So main event, Corey Anderson finally gets his major MMA title. He is the new Bellator light heavyweight champion. He won a unanimous decision over Karl Moore, and it seems like it was a good fight. This is one I really wish I could watch, because it seems like Karl Moore came out hot and actually had Corey somewhat wobbled in the first, but Corey recovered and got a takedown and kind of did what he does. Round 2 seemed like sort of the nothing round of this fight. And then round 3 on seems like it was kind of the same story, where it just became very grindy from Corey, where he had to deal with some things. In round 3, there was a couple armbar attempts. He got cracked a couple times. Round 4 and 5, it seemed like he took over more. But it does seem like the story of this fight is that Karl Moore got up off the mat about a million different times and just would not go away and kept trying to find ways to hurt Corey. So I would love to see this fight. It seems like Karl Moore made a good account of himself. But either way, it seems like everyone does agree that Corey Anderson should have got the nod, and he did. And he is now the Bellator light heavyweight champion. So good for him. He should have had it, a couple fights back when he was on his way to beating Nemkov before that craziness. Yep. So at least he gets it now. Moving on down, Patricio Pitbull defended his featherweight title with a round 3 TKO of Jeremy Kennedy. The early story of this one seemed to be leg kicks adding up quickly for Pitbull on Kennedy. And then in round 2, Kennedy did respond. He got a takedown, but Pitbull worked his way up, and seems like most people still scored the round for him. But then round 3 is where everything got crazy, because Kennedy cut Pitbull on his head and looks to have gotten a little bit over aggressive and just a little bit too comfortable exchanging strikes, since he thought he had Pitbull hurt. And he got caught, and the legs went. And thankfully, I was able to find the highlight from this point forward, because his legs go, and he gets backed up to the cage, and Pitbull unloads one of the greatest barrages you will ever see in your life. Punches, elbows, body shots, knees, not a second for Kennedy to breathe. Kennedy fucking stood there for a long-ass time. I ran the highlight back, and I counted strikes, because I couldn't believe how many strikes I was seeing in this barrage. 32 strikes from Pitbull from the time he started unloading on Kennedy against the cage. And finally, Kennedy dropped, and Pitbull got the TKO victory to retain his belt. So huge one for him to bounce back from his recent performances. And he remains Bellator featherweight champion. Not done yet.
Yeah, man.
Just to run down the next few. Fabian Edwards won a UD over Aaron Jeffrey. There's another one I wish I could see, man. It seems like it was a really grueling back and forth fight where Jeffrey was just relentless and Edwards handled everything that was coming to him. It also seems like Jeffrey was up 1-0 after the first, and it was Edwards who had to dig deep. I kind of thought it might happen the other way. But he did. And Edwards won 2 and 3. The takedown D looks like it was on point. He stuffed everything. If he ever did get taken down, he seemed to be right back up, and he did more damage on the feet, and he cut Jeffrey up. So he'll get himself another shot against Johnny Edmen. It looks like they're going to go right back to that. And then the last 2, Leandro Higo won a UD over James Gallagher, disappointing the Irish fans. And from what I can tell, this one was all Higo. It seems like Gallagher may have been a bit slicker in his setups and the grappling, but Higo was always more than ready to defend. And aside from that, it just seems like Higo was the stronger fighter, the better wrestler, the one who presented more danger on the feet. And then through it all, it seems like he was racking up his fair share of ground and pound as well. So it looks like it was a pretty clear win for Leandro Higo on the cards. And then the last one was Manuel Sousa coming over from the PFL against Tim Wilde. And from what it sounds like here, Tim Wilde was fighting a great fight until the second that he wasn't. He had Sousa swinging and missing, had him off balance. He was sticking him with the jab, managing the distance well, and then one bomb of a left hand, and Tim Wilde went all the way out. But that's kind of what Manuel Sousa brings. Like, he is about the explosiveness and the power. So I guess it's not shocking that that's how it went down and that Wilde was looking good for a bit there. But yeah, Manuel Sousa with a round 1 knockout. So he is he's off and running as a name to watch. And that's it. I wish I could give you some more clear takes from actually having watched these fucking fights. But if you can at least go on YouTube or wherever and find the barrage from Pitbull, because it is worth watching. It was crazy.
All right, boys, let's keep this thing moving right along. And Omar, let's hop into your segment, Inside the MMA Sphere, wherein you update us on all the goings on in the world of MMA outside of the cage. Take it away.
Well, the top story of this weekend, or of this week, I should say, has really been about the settlement of the UFC fighters' lawsuit against the UFC, or Zuffa specifically. So it seems that they have settled for, I believe it was $335 million, if I remember that properly. $335 million. And it's actually, so all the, once you get through all of the legal jargon, at the end of the day, it's TKO Group Holdings now, right? It's no longer Zuffa, even though I think the original lawsuit was against Zuffa. But at this point, all of it leads back to, or stops at, TKO Holdings. So they will be paying $335 million to settle two class action lawsuits filed by former UFC fighters. Basically, the two lawsuits had been combined into one. And I believe I think they said there were about 1,000 participants that were on that lawsuit or whatever it was. I also heard that the lawyer fees are going to take 30% right off the top, which, shit, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But obviously that payment is going to be, it's not a lump sum payment. So it's a payment that has been agreed to be paid out over the course of a period of time. I believe, I don't remember if it was monthly installments or yearly installments. But it's one of those things that it's not like a big JP Morgan, I want my money now. It's not one of those things. So it'll take a little time for everybody to get their money. I believe there are different opinions as to whether this is a win or a loss. The fact is there were no contractual obligations that were changed. They didn't do anything, from what I understand, to change any contract or force any contract changes going forward. This was just one of those situations where they could have gone to trial and they could have won probably 6 times what they settled for, but they also could have won 0, like nothing, big goose egg if they lost. So this is, I think, just erring on the side of caution. I'm sure the UFC just wants to be done with this. It's also one of these things that they can't bring this up again in litigation because it is officially settled. So for $335 million, they basically don't have to worry about getting sued for antitrust bullshit, at least not from this group of people again.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
When you've got... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I saw a headline that said it was a very bad result for the future of the PFL and won. So I don't know why. I'm not sure what the implication is. But that's what I saw. So I didn't know.
So that was
more than me.
That was Luke Thomas's point of view from what I saw, and his assertion was that the UFC is such a monopoly and such a force in MMA that there isn't enough money to sustain and enough consumerism to sustain multiple businesses with that same business model. If you take away, and there's always going to be the possibility that Saudi Arabia is just going to be willing to burn and throw money around. There's always going to be that, right? They could technically sustain some of these promotions for however the hell long they decide they want to, but it's not a business model that you can say is going to create its own money like the UFC. The UFC is not reliant on Saudi Arabia or anybody necessarily to make their money. They now are the quote unquote well-oiled machine that turns a profit, right? A lot of these companies don't necessarily turn a profit, but they get investors or they get money from outside areas that allows them to stay afloat and do the business that they need to do and things like that. So I think Luke Thomas's assertion was that now that there's no regulations in place, there's no changes to the regulatory way that the UFC operates and how they have a monopoly and things like that, that as a result of that and the lawsuit not forcing that, that is just a matter of time before these other businesses, these other MMA organizations eventually go out of business.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh,
what else you got?
Still. Sure. Yeah. It was yeah. So that was really the big news. Next on the list, we do have the ex-UFC champs Luke Rockhold and Tyron Woodley. They are apparently coaching what looks like a Ultimate Fighter's like ripoff for a Russian organization called Hardcore FC. Something tells me, if nothing else, there will be a ton of fights on that show that are not inside of an octagon. So should be interesting. I guess we'll see what happens with that. Unlike the former, in case you were wondering, because they are not even close to the same size, I would imagine, they will not be fighting at the end of this thing that they're doing.
Hasn't Woodley fought at 85? He's fought at 85, no?
You guys froze for me in the beginning. Who are you talking about?
Woodley and Luke Rockhold. They are going to be coaching this like Ultimate Fighter spinoff, or not spinoff, a ripoff show from the Russian organization Hardcore FC. They will not be fighting at the end there. So,
yeah, I don't think Woodley has fought at 85, Mike.
No,
I don't think so.
Maybe I'm wrong.
He's a small dude for 85. Next on the list, Felipe Lins is entering free agency now. He's decided not to immediately re-sign with the UFC, although that is still very much a possibility. But he is testing the waters of free agency, and he will see how that turns out.
So I read I don't know the validity of this, but I read a tweet from like some random dude. But he said that the deal was that Felipe Lins had a bunch of demands for his new contract, and the UFC was basically like, bro, you're Felipe Lins, like, we'll see you later. So I wonder if that's actually how that went.
Damn. Well, hopefully it works out for Lins, you know. Last little story we have on the list, and we'll get into some fight announcements. Brandon Moreno has officially announced his stepping back from MMA at this point. Has basically said that he is a little burnt out at this point. I think he's and I can empathize, right? He's had a couple of very close fights, very tough fights, fights that I'm assuming have taken the toll on him and his body and his time. And he hasn't come out on top. And I think he's thought that he has. And I think the fact that there's a possibility that he might have in a lot of people's eyes, but not in the judge's eyes, I think it's starting to wear on him. From the Instagram post that he put up. If you want to read the full thing, I would recommend you visiting his Instagram page and taking a close look. But that was basically the gist of what I understood from it. Is basically he's just a little burnt out mentally at this point. He's going to be taking a step back, focusing on his family, focusing on his training, without having to worry about, his next fight or the politics or the media requirements, getting asked the same question on a relatively daily basis, which seems to be a really big criticism. I think we've heard from every fighter everywhere, even actors, frankly, say a lot of the same thing when they do these press tours and stuff like that. So hopefully we don't see Moreno out of the mix for too long. It's not a bad time for him to step away, to be honest. The landscape is very stagnant for what he has going on, and it makes fight matchups for him really difficult unless you go down the list. So I don't really hate the decision, but just hopefully he doesn't stay out too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, just come back for the Sphere against Henry Cejudo. Thanks.
That's like right now.
The Sphere?
It's like 5 months away now at this point. 6 months.
Yeah. So why can't he fucking take 3 months off and then get in the gym?
Because I don't think taking 3 months off is 3 months off. That's like waiting for your next camp. I think he's talking about a break, like a year.
I mean, I'm sure he is, but it's not. I'm hoping for otherwise.
So Mark's like, fuck that. Get back to work. Let's go. All right, we have a few fight announcements, some good ones on here, and we'll get right into this weekend's card. We're going to start with Marnik Mann versus Ketlin Souza has been added to UFC's Vegas card on April 27th. Tim Means versus Uros Medic. That fight has been added to April 27th as well. And Ryan Spann versus Bogdan Guskov. That has also been added to the April 27th card. Ismail Bonfim versus Vince Pichel has been added to UFC's 301 card on May 4th. Alex Caceres versus Sean Woodson added to UFC's St. Louis card on May 11th. Adrian Yanez versus Vinicius Salvador added to UFC's May 18th event. Edson Barboza versus Lerone Murphy also added to UFC's May 18th event.
Wow, I've been missing the fight announcements.
Yeah. Roman Dolitz versus Fluffy Hernandez added to UFC's 302 event on June 1st. Hailton Almeida versus Alexander Volkov also added to the June 1st card as well. Nate Maness versus Jimmy Flick added to the June 15 card. And Alex Perez versus Tagir Ulanbekov also on that June 15 card.
Wow.
Last two we have Cody Durden versus Carlos Hernandez has been added to UFC's 303 card on June 29th. And last but not least, Luana Santos versus Maria Agapova has been added to UFC's July 13th event. And that is all we have for you this week.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Like it. Love it. Gotta have it. Okay, let's talk about what's happening this coming weekend, boys. And then we'll wrap up. So this weekend, we have another fight night card. UFC Fight Night Blanchfield versus Fiorot going down in Atlantic City, New Jersey, with a flyweight bout between Aaron Cold-Blooded Blanchfield taking on the Beast, Manon Fiorot out of Nice, France. Let's get into this fight card, rather. Before we do the main card, what's the one preview that you guys want to talk about real quick?
The Jandiroba Godinez.
Sorry. Yeah. I thought you were asking me what undercards to say. I didn't realize what your question was. Can I mention undercards?
Yeah, please.
So yeah, the prelim we're doing, is Godinez and Jandiroba. But I do like the Andre Petrosky versus Jacob Malkoun fight on this card. They're like the same exact fighter. I think that's an interesting fight. Originally, it was a main card fight, and it just keeps getting moved lower and lower and lower on this card. I think Dana doesn't want anyone to see the wrestlers in there. But I like that fight. And then I also like seeing Julio Arce move back up to featherweight. He's fighting Herbert Burns. I didn't love him at bantamweight. I think featherweight suits him more. His speed is more of an advantage there, and I'm happy to see him move back up. So I'm curious to see how he looks in that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm also curious to see how Herbert Burns looks because he did not look great in his last performance.
No, he did not. So. He's a very hit and miss fighter.
Yeah.
Tis true. Let's talk about the main card fights now.
Well, no, we're going to do Virna versus Lupi.
Oh, Virna versus Lupi, my bad. Let me pull this up.
Which I don't know why the fuck this fight is on the prelims with these random fights above it on the main card when it's literally number 5 versus number 10. But
for me, it's like if you're going to make them a prelim fight, and that's fine, make them the headliner at least. But they're not even that.
I don't get it at all. I really don't.
And it's not. And to be fair, there are times where there are fights between two women that on paper may not seem like they're going to be super exciting. This is fucking not one of them. Jandiroba versus Lupi is on paper a fantastic fight, full of nonsense that could happen. Like I don't get
And
it.
not only that, but at a certain point, you have to respect people who are high level in their divisions. Like, I'm not trying to hate on people, but like Rhys McKee, I don't even think has a UFC win yet. And he's on the main card, and the two girls who are top 10 in their division are not on the main card. Like, I get it. You're trying to put exciting fights on the main card, but like at a certain point, I think these girls need to have their respect and not be 8 fights down the card.
Yeah, man. So Jandiroba, 19-3 as a pro. And let's see, she is 35 years old, out of Brazil, of course. She's 5-3 in the UFC. And she's coming off back-to-back wins over Angela Hill and Marina Rodriguez. Lupita Godinez, out of Mexico, of course, 30 years old, 12-3 as a pro, 7-3 in the UFC. Let's see. She's riding a nice win streak, 4 wins in a row coming into this weekend. Mark, go first.
All right, so Lupi is a 2-1 favorite, even a little wider than I thought it would be. She's exactly minus 200, and Virna is plus 170. 1 inch of height and 3 inches of reach for Virna. I doubted Virna in her last fight against Marina Rodriguez, and she won it without any issue. She controlled Marina all fight long. So I'm a little nervous to doubt her again here, but that is exactly what I'm going to do. I think that Lupi is a difficult matchup for her. I think Lupi should be the stronger of the two of them. We just saw her stuff a bunch of takedowns against Tabitha Ricci, and I get it, Ricci and Virna are different in their approaches to the takedown, but I'm still encouraged with the defensive wrestling that I've seen from Lupi lately. And overall, I just think she's the more well-rounded fighter by a pretty long stretch. You know, anytime that she can force Virna to exchange on the feet, I think is going to be time that Lupi's piecing her up. Her hands, and really her whole game, but specifically her hands, are only getting better every single time we see her, and I think she can get this done. So I'm going to go Lupi Godinez to win a UD.
Omar.
I would agree with that. I think Lupi is going to be the stronger fighter. At this point, I just think that I've seen the improvements from her, and I'm hoping though that kind of momentum continues. It seems like she's found a relationship, I believe, with Alexa Grasso in training, right?
Yep.
And I think we've seen a lot of the results so far, a lot of the fruits of that labor. And while Jandiroba, I think, is an absolute beast on the ground, man, I think that Lupi has just been working a lot more. It just seems like her progression has been a lot more. There is a possibility that she gets caught on the ground. I just don't think it's going to happen, man. I just think Lupi has been on such a roll that I think she's going to keep going in that direction. So I don't think she finishes Jandiroba. I think it's going to be a well-fought fight. I don't think it's going to be an easy one for her by any stretch of the imagination, but I think she comes out on top. So I'm going to go with Lupi, unanimous decision.
We are unanimous on this one. I think that Godinez is going to be a cut above in terms of her overall skills and especially her striking prowess on the feet. Yeah, I agree. Lupi by UD, 3 rounds to none for Godinez. Let's now go to the welterweight division. Chidi and Njokuani cutting down to 170, taking on Rhys McKee. So Njokuani, let's see. He is the 35-year-old, born in Dallas, Texas, though fighting now out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's see. His record stands at 22-10 with 1 no contest. He is 2-3 thus far, a losing record, though not a ton of fights in the UFC. 2-3 in the UFC, 5-3 under the Bellator banner, though. And he's looking to right the ship here, being on a 3-fight losing streak in the UFC. So he won on Contender Series, then won his first 2 back-to-back fights in the UFC, and now is on a 3-fight skid, losing to Hobokop, Duraev, and most recently Algeo. And all of these were at 185 pounds, and now he's trying to reinvent himself, cutting down to 170, taking on Rhys McKee. Skeletor, the 28-year-old out of Ireland. His pro record stands at 13-5 with 1 draw, and he is looking to get his first ever UFC win. He's 0-3 under the UFC banner. He's been in and out of the UFC a little bit. His UFC debut, he lost to Chimaev in negative 4 seconds. He lost to Alex Morono. And then he was out of the UFC. He went back over to Cage Warriors. 3-fight win streak there. And back in the UFC, lost to Angelusa in September of last year. And now he's back looking for his first taste of victory in the UFC octagon, taking on the very large and very menacing Chidi Njokuani. Mark, give us your thoughts on this fight.
So the odds are a lot closer than you may imagine. And I think it is solely because of the concerns about this weight cut. Chidi is only minus 145. Rhys McKee is plus 120 as the underdog. They're 1 inch of height and 2 inches of reach for Chidi. And on the note of this weight cut that I'm talking about here, when I first saw this fight, I just assumed that Rhys McKee was moving up to 185 because he's kind of a skinny guy. And I just said, oh, wow, Rhys is going to try to pack on some muscle here and move up. I'm not sure how that's going to work out for him. And time passed, and I never even considered that it was the other way around. I know Chidi's fought at welterweight before, but it was like 7 years ago at this point, and he's a jacked, shredded middleweight. And I sit down a couple days ago knowing I got to preview this fight, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? This dude's going to 170? So I never even considered it, and I'm pretty nervous about it because, like I said, it's been a while. He is huge. I specifically remember in Bellator him making a comment about how he can't do it because he feels like he's going to die. And now here we are again at age 35, and he's going to do it. So it's a worry, and I'm not sure what I think about his cardio either, because if Rhys can survive like the first 3-4 minutes of hell that Chidi probably puts on him, then this fight could swing big time, because I think Chidi's cardio could go to shit, and Rhys is a zombie and a guy who knows how to pour on pressure as the fight goes on. So while I love Chidi, and I think that 3-4 minutes of hell could easily include Chidi putting Rhys down for a nap, the way this dude absorbs strikes like Tic Tacs, like we just saw in the Angelasa fight, it just makes me think this is a matchup he can win. And I really don't have good vibes about this weight cut. I really don't. You know, and maybe he looks great at the weigh-ins, and I might change my mind once I see that. But if I got to make a pick today, I don't think I can trust Chidi as a welterweight. So I will go Rhys McKee to survive some early shit and get a round 3 knockout that's more so like via attrition.
Wow. Via attrition. Rhys McKee by knockout round 3. Omar, your thoughts?
I would have to think that he is only doing this cut to 170 because he has the tools and the resources and the ability to do it properly, right? I think when you look back to times in Bellator and things like that, while Bellator treats, you know, their fighters great and things like that, there are limitations to what it is. It sounds like that they provide their fighters. And while the UFC gets a lot of shit for fighter pay and stuff like that, we never really talk about the fact that they provide them with a lot of the resources they need to try and, you know, be as successful as they can be. And this is outside of money that they don't have to pay for. You know, the UFC PI apparently provides a lot of great resources for food, weight cuts, nutritionists, and all kinds of things. So it's very possible that Chidi decided to make this move because he felt comfortable with how he was going to make this move. Maybe he's got a nutritionist now where he didn't in Bellator. You know, we don't know. I just can't imagine he makes this move like, well, I think I might die, but fuck it, let's do it anyway. And he just does it. I would imagine there's a little bit more, you know, sense behind the decision to go down to 170. It's a big ask, man. 15 pounds is like, as bad as it already sounds, probably to the layman, it's worse. That's a brutal weight cut. Especially when it's not even like he walks around at 185 pounds, which he might have to at this point. He might have to be in a position where his routine is to diet himself so that he's constantly at around 185 and then, you know, during fight weeks and things like that, the couple weeks leading up to it is when he really starts to cut and lose that weight. But we'll see. There's a lot of speculation in that department. I'm going to focus on the technique. I'm going to focus on the fight itself. I'm going to assume that Chidi gets in there prepared and looks good. If that does happen, I think Chidi can take this one. I think his skills are pretty goddamn on point. I think his power will also translate from 185 even better to 180. I don't think he loses any speed, if we're being honest. I think he probably gains a little bit. And I think Rhys McKee has a bad habit of becoming a heavy bag. And I think Chidi can take advantage of that. So I'm going to go with Chidi here. I don't think he does put down Rhys McKee. I think he does have to last him for probably the whole 3 rounds. But I think by the time it's all said and done, especially going into the 3rd round, I think Chidi will have done enough to win it. So as long as he doesn't get his ass knocked out, I have Chidi by unanimous decision.
Yeah, this is a tough one. It's a big question mark for Njokuani. I'm gonna roll with Omar on this one. I have a hard time thinking that he's making this decision irrationally. I mean, this cut's gonna fuck him up at least a little bit, but I'm hoping at least that he's doing it in a way that's healthy enough that he's gonna do it well. So I'm going to roll with him. I'll say he gets a knockout in the 1st round, cutting down to a lighter weight class. And let's go on to the next one. Here we go. In the featherweight division, Bill Algeo taking on Kyle Nelson. Senor Perfecto, Bill Algeo. 18-7 as a pro, the 34-year-old out of King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. His pro record stands at 18-7, with 4 wins coming by way of knockout, 7 wins coming by way of submission. He's 5-3 in the UFC, and he's coming off back-to-back wins in the octagon over TJ Brown and Alex Hernandez. He'll be taking on Kyle the Monster Nelson. He is the 32-year-old fighting out of Huntsville, Ontario, Canada. His professional record stands at 15-5-1. And he is 3-4 with 1 draw under the UFC banner. And he also is coming off back-to-back wins coming into this weekend. Omar, start us off this time. Give us your take and your pick of this fight.
I think it's a good fight. I think it's a good fight for Algeo. I think Kyle Nelson presents, definitely some problems when it comes to the pressure and the movement and the ground game. But I think Algeo is one of those guys that not only does he present his own pressure, but knows how to deal with pressure himself. And I think Algeo will have more success cutting angles and getting and taking advantage of the moments just after he cuts angles. So I expect a lot of movement from Algeo in this fight. I expect Kyle Nelson to probably be a step behind a lot of these sequences and these exchanges. Kyle Nelson's a durable motherfucker though, and that's kind of the problem. So I think Bill Algeo is going to have to do it at least for 2 of these rounds. I think he can get it done, but I don't expect it to be an easy night for Algeo. So I'm going to go with Algeo here, unanimous decision.
Okay. Mark?
So Algeo's favorite, he's -230. Kyle Nelson is +190. Algeo's an inch taller. He's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. And yeah, I really don't feel like I'm ready to pick Kyle Nelson to beat Bill Algeo, man. I know Nelson is in the best form we've seen from him coming into this fight, and there's a world where he ekes this out. But if we look back at this little streak of his, of a draw and 2 wins that he's on right now, the draw was really a loss to Choi. Then the Builder one was because Builder could only wrestle. And the Padilla one was because Padilla fought like he didn't care. So for me to look back at those things, picking him to beat Bill Algeo just feels like too big of a step to me. I think the violence is on the side of Bill Algeo in this fight. The pace is on his side. Even the wrestling, I think, is on his side if he decides to go that route. So I'm going to side with him. I think he can walk Nelson down a bit. I know Nelson always stays in that shell and that he can fire some hard, straight shots, but Algeo does a really good job to me of rolling with shots and moving his head, and I just think he can stay safe enough and get more done in this matchup. So I'll go with Bill Algeo to win a UD as well.
We are unanimous once again. I'm a fan of Bill Algeo. I think he's super skilled. I think he's a guy in this division who kind of goes a little unnoticed because the division is so stacked. But I think he's super talented, and I think he has the skills to notch a UD over the monster Kyle Nelson. And we move on up to the middleweight division with Nursultan Ruziboev. I'm probably butchering that name.
No, you got
That was good.
Oh, thank you. Taking on Cedricus Dumas or Dumas.
That I don't remember, actually.
I think it's Dumas.
Probably Dumas. Yeah, Dumas or Dumas.
I think that's it.
Okay, let's see here. So Ruziboev, the 30-year-old out of Uzbekistan, his pro record stands at 33 victories with 8 defeats, 2 draws, and 2 no contests. This 30-year-old has been around the block. He's 1-0 thus far in the UFC after winning his debut over Bruno Ferreira back in July. And now he's back taking on Cedricus Dumas, the Reaper, the 28-year-old out of Pensacola, Florida, USA. His pro record, 9-1, 2-1 under the UFC banner, with 4 of his 9 wins coming by way of knockout, another 2 by submission, only 3 wins going the distance, and he is riding a back-to-back win streak as well coming into this weekend. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah, I think we've definitely got a relatively interesting style matchup on here. Ruziboev, while he's, does have some solid kickboxing, I would imagine is probably going to be looking for the takedowns here. He's going to be looking to take this down to the ground. Dumas doesn't necessarily have, the repertoire of the wrestler or anything like that. So I would assume the path of least resistance here is to not stand up with the kickboxer and Dumas and take him down to the ground. And I think Dumas has shown some competent striking. He seems like he's decent enough. I don't know. I'm not really sold on either one of these guys. I think they're still very early on in their career. I haven't seen anything from either one that strikes me as something amazing or extraordinary. But I think it should be a fun fight. I would imagine Ruziboev can control a good majority of this fight, especially if he's able to take it down on the ground. So I'm going to go with Ruziboev here by decision.
Mark.
So he is a fairly big favorite. He's minus 265, Ruziboev, and Dumas is plus 215. 3 inches of height for Ruziboev, but 3 inches of reach for Dumas. So that's interesting. It's hard for me to evaluate Ruziboev in the UFC thus far off of a 1-minute debut. I mean, we know his skill set from prior to entering the octagon. He has a ton of finishes by both strikes and by submission. So obviously he's a dangerous guy and he can do it everywhere. And I think just off of that, it's easier for me to trust him than it is to trust Dumas. Because yes, Dumas beat Brundage, but it's a fight where Brundage wouldn't stop jumping guillotine the whole fight and kept putting himself in bad spots. Then he beat Abu Azaitar, but I thought it was a fight where neither of them really looked great. So I'm just not overly impressed with Dumas thus far, and it's easier for me to side with the finishing ability of Ruziboev here. So that's what I'm going to do. I think they're similar fighters, but that Ruziboev just carries more danger in all these areas. Like I think he can strike with Cedricus, and I think he can tap Cedricus potentially. So that's what I'll pick. I'm going to go round 2 sub for Ruziboev.
Tell me again the odds. How far apart are they?
Minus 265 Ruziboev, plus 215 Dumas.
That's about right.
I mean, you guys know me. I like picking the younger bucks over the older guys. Ruziboev isn't that much older. There's only about a 2-year gap between the two. But to me, I'm going to go against my usual picking trends, and I'm going to go with the experience of Nursultan Ruziboev over the young up-and-comer who's only 9-1. This record just impresses me. I think the guy has a ton of fights. I mean, I don't think he does. And just a ton of miles and experience, and I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say he gets a UD over the up-and-comer in Dumas. Okay, going to the middleweight division, Bruno Silva taking on Chris Weidman. Bruno Silva, blindado, the 34-year-old out of Curitiba, Brazil. His pro record stands at 23-10. Under the UFC banner, he is 4-4 even, and he is riding back-to-back losses. And he's has lost 4 of his last 5 in the UFC. The only one win being over Brad Tavares. He lost to Alex Pereira, Gerald Mearshart. Then he defeated Brad Tavares. Then he lost to Brendan All-In Allen, and most recently he lost to Shara Magomedov back in October. And now he is back, stepping back into the UFC octagon, taking on the former UFC middleweight champion, Chris the All-American Weidman. He's now 39 years old, from Baldwin, New York, out on Long Island, training out of Sarah Longo. His pro record, 15-7 under the UFC banner, 11-7. So all 7 of his career losses have been with the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and he too is looking to right the ship here, being on a 2-fight back-to-back losses. And since losing his title to Luke Rockhold back in 2015, it has been mostly red on the record and not as much green. Trying to count this up real quick.
Yeah,
looks like he's lost 7 of his last 9 fights.
It's not great.
Has Weidman. He said in his interview this week with Helwani that he still feels like he can put it together and compete with the best in the world and be considered the best in the world. Mark, give me your thoughts on this fight, this matchup between Bruno Silva and Chris Weidman.
So Bruno's almost 3-1. He is minus 290. Chris Weidman is plus 230. There are 2 inches of height and 4 inches of reach on the Chris Weidman side of things, so he'll be the bigger man. But I just can't pick Chris anymore. I really wish I could. Love Chris Weidman. I wish that we were not at this stage. And as much as I like Silva, I do think that prime Chris Weidman would have absolutely handled him. But we're talking about 39-year-old Chris Weidman, and his body is completely failing him. Even his chin is not the same. And I just don't think that's a great recipe against Bruno Silva. Like, I get it that Bruno has lost 4 out of 5. It's not like he's some unbeatable guy. And if Chris ever got a couple takedowns, a submission is absolutely possible for him. But Bruno's still a guy who struck with Alex Pereira for 15 minutes, who finished Brad Tavares with strikes, who even against Brendan Allen had some solid blitzes in moments. And I'm just not sure I trust Chris to deal with those blitzes. Maybe he does, and maybe he finds a takedown in some crazy transition, and we're all like, wow, look at this moment for Chris Weidman. But I can't bet on that. So I am going to go with Bruno Silva to win via round 2 TKO.
Omar.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why I want Chris Weidman to retire is because I'm tired of having to choose who to pick in these fights. I hate picking against Chris Weidman, but I also don't want to pick Chris Weidman. It sucks, man, because I'm not even excited for this fight because it's Bruno Silva, like you said, isn't necessarily this world beater, but the Chris Weidman we saw against Brad Tavares was not too many hits away from essentially being a walking punching bag in that fight. And Brad Tavares frankly held back. We could argue different things here and there, but Brad Tavares held back in that fight for whatever reason. Respect, whatever.
Respect, yeah, totally.
Yeah, some guys would argue that holding back isn't respectful, but
Oh, really?
We don't need to go. Yeah, we don't need to go down that path. That doesn't matter. The point is I do think that Tavares held back, and I don't think for a second that Bruno Silva is going to hold back. Bruno Silva is of the shoot to box wild childs down there. And I think if he has the opportunity to murder Chris Weidman, I think he will. So I think people who are more technical than Bruno Silva, like we've seen, can do well against him. I think people who can stop his aggressive forward brawling style can do well against him. Chris Weidman just hasn't shown any of those abilities in quite some time. So I'll be rooting for Chris Weidman, but I don't expect to have any success with the rooting. So I'm just going to go with Bruno Silva by unanimous decision.
Man, as much as I want to say like this one, this is a feel pick. Chris is going to do it. He's going to roll back the clock. Guys, it just wouldn't be a smart pick. It just wouldn't be a smart pick at this point. So kids, if you're watching this, it wouldn't be a smart pick. Same ditto on all the things you guys said about Weidman. Loved him during his title run. He finished Anderson Silva technically twice. Crazy stuff. Defended the belt a couple times. And then what happened. What happened.
Dog, outside of his like run through of the Brazilian legends, outside of that run, he's won twice.
Yeah.
That sucks. Like, that is rough as hell. The man has won twice since 2015.
Yeah.
Yep. Jesus.
So I really want to see him not stand up in this fight. I'd love to see him try to go back to his wrestling roots. Even if he does do that, I think still just the smart pick. If I'm a picking man, I'm not a betting man really, but as a picking man, the smart pick here is Bruno Silva. I'll say Silva UD. I do not want to see Chris Weidman get finished again.
Yeah. That's the thing, though. Chris Weidman's durability is not going to get goddamn better. I don't even understand the logic there. Like, it's his one leg went, right? We cracked that leg in half. Goes into his last fight against Brad Tavares. He gets his other leg fucked up. And somehow we're supposed to believe he's going to come in here stronger than ever? I don't know. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, it's like I wonder, I guess it's his competitive spirit at 39 years old. Like why he wants to keep going in there against other killers. I mean, he still believes that he himself is a killer. And he is in a certain degree, but it also makes me think of, things like fighter pay, a little bit of like, how much money is Chris Weidman going to make during this fight? Is he going to make, how far into the six figures do you think he's going to make from this fight? 200, 300 for this as a former champ?
I would imagine he probably gets, I would say at least 200 grand.
Which in the long run, as a 39-year-old, to sustain you for the rest of your fucking life with what has he got? Like 4 kids?
Yeah. I would imagine though Weidman's
make way more than that. So.
Yeah, Weidman, I would assume like a lot of other guys, especially having the circle, with the Iaquintas who do the real estate and all that stuff. I would imagine he's got financially, he's probably got some investments that he's probably
he
good
seems
with
like he's been smart
like that,
for sure. For
yeah,
sure.
I don't know, man.
Too, partially.
Oh, he does.
Right. Yeah, I'm ready to. Oh, that's right. It's the Longo Weidman gym, right, or something like that. Weidman Longo.
It's called like Law or something. Am I making that up?
Law MMA. That's right, Law MMA. Yeah. I'm ready for Weidman to be done, though. To be honest, these performances are rough to watch, man. I don't like watching Weidman get beat on the way that he has been.
Yeah, man. All right, let's move on. 2 more here. In this co-main and main event pair is really nice for this fight night. In the co-main event in the welterweight division, Vicente the Silent Assassin Luque takes on Joaquin Numansa Buckley. Did I say Joaquin?
Joaquin.
I keep making that mistake. I've made that a couple times now. Well, because of Joaquin Noah. Okay, back on the ball here. Vicente Luque, the silent assassin, 32 years old, out of Brazil, of course. His pro record as of this date, 22 victories, 9 defeats, and 1 draw. And he is coming off a win over RDA back in August. He gets back in the octagon this Saturday night, stands across from Joaquin Buckley, 17-6 as a pro, 29 years old, out of Missouri. And riding back-to-back wins over Andre Fialio. Oh, that was a nice win. And more recently, a decision win over Alex Morono. Mark started off this time. Give us your take and the pick and the odds.
So we got to pick them. They're not identical. It's Luque's minus 115, Buckley's minus 110, but it is basically the same thing. It's coin flip here. 1 inch of height for Vicente. The reach is the same. I'm having a hard time picking this fight. I really am.
Yeah.
I like the games of both of these guys. If you told me that they were going to purely strike for all 15 minutes, I think I'd be ready to go with Joaquin Buckley. As nasty as Vicente Luque is, I just think Buckley is a bit faster. I think he's a bit better defensively, a bit slicker. So if it's purely striking, I think I lean toward him. But the X factor for me here is the grappling of Vicente Luque. And it's not just opportunistic grappling anymore. He just beat RDA at his own game. And he showed a skill set that we've never seen from him before. He willingly took Dos Anjos down again and again and out-wrestled him and out-grappled him. And if he chooses to go that route against Joaquin Buckley, as much as Buckley's strong as hell and has experience against bigger dudes at 185, I still think it could be enough for Luque to swing a close fight. So I don't know. I really am torn. I wanted to like delve further into breaking down this fight and like watch some tape and look for some things that may sway me one way or the other, but I haven't had a minute to do that. So I may change my mind. And if I do, I'm going to write it in the comments on this video because I really do want to look closer at this fight. But for right now, I don't think I see Luque just abandoning something that he just brought to the table one fight ago and that worked so well for him. I don't think he just goes in here and strikes for 15 minutes. So I'm going to say that wrestling is enough for him to edge it. And I'll say it's a 29-28 UD for Vicente Luque.
Omar.
I don't hate that. This has also been a very difficult pick for me as well. And I think for me, my deciding factor really came down to the power of Buckley and really the durability of Vicente Luque, right? Vicente Luque is a tough dude. But we saw him against Jeff Neal. And Jeff Neal is a heavy puncher. And we saw him run into his punches quite a bit in that fight. For as durable as he is, Vicente Luque is not the best at getting his head out of the way. And I think his propensity to get hit is going to shit all over his dreams when the guy who hits him hits like a Mack truck. And that's exactly what Joaquin Buckley does. So I do think it's going to be a difficult fight. I do think Vicente Luque has the tools to beat Joaquin Buckley for sure. And we're really just nitpicking at this point. I mean, this is really coming down to what opportunity do you think might show his head first, or at least what opportunity you think might get taken advantage of first. But the reality is both of these guys, like the lines suggest, have the same ability to murder each other. So this really is a coin flip for me. It really could be Vicente Luque coming out on top here, but I'm going to ride with Joaquin Buckley in this one. I think he might be able to get this one out here. But I do think that if he does get it out, I think he's going to have to finish Vicente Luque. I think if it goes to decision, I think Luque takes it. But I think Buckley's going to win this one, and I think he's going to do it in the second round, KO.
I'm going to ride with Omar on this one.
Oh, shit.
I'm going to go with the explosiveness of Joaquin Buckley to get a surprising finish victory over the super talented Vicente Luque, of whom I am a big fan. But I have been very impressed by Buckley as of late. I think he looks great at 170 pounds. And I think it's going to be great for the division as well to have this new blood in Buckley kind of reaching the elite of welterweight. So I'm going to go Buckley by knockout in round 2.
Mike, I already had written you down
Write it
for Luque because that's your boy.
And now we go up to the main event. What's that?
I had already written you down for Luque because that's your boy. I didn't even consider that you were going against him.
It's true. Yeah, I'm a big Luque fan. Okay, main event time. UFC Fight Night Blanchfield versus Fiorot. We have in the women's flyweight division, Erin Blanchfield taking on the Beast, Manon Fiorot. Blanchfield, the 24-year-old out of Elmwood Park, New Jersey, although she's listed as fighting out of New York. Her pro record stands at 12-1 with, 6 of her 12 wins being finishes, 4 of them submissions, 2 of them being knockouts. She's undefeated in the UFC, 6-0 in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Most recently, getting a unanimous decision victory over the very talented Taila Santos. And she steps back into the octagon this weekend, taking on her toughest challenge yet in Manon the Beast Fiorot. The rising 34-year-old prospect out of France. Her pro record 11-1, so very similar records here, Blanchfield and Fiorot. So very nice matchmaking. It's time that these two fight. Of her 11 victories, 6 of them have come by way of knockout. 0 victories, notably by submission. She, too, is undefeated in the UFC, 6-0 in the UFC. Most recently getting a unanimous decision victory over the former champion Rose Namajunas, who just fought this past weekend. So here we go. We have Blanchfield, we have Fiorot. Mark, start it off. Give us the odds, your thoughts, and ultimately your pick.
So there's some confidence behind Blanchfield. Actually, I should have looked what this opened at because I'm curious. I wonder if it was closer and money came in on her, but she is 2-1. She is minus 200.
Blanchfield, wow.
Yep.
I thought that honestly, I thought this would be a pick'em fight. I thought we would be minus 100, minus 110, that kind of situation there.
So I'm very curious. I'm going to look if I can see the opening odds.
Wow, it's crazy that it just seems super far apart for this fight.
So
it's been a minute since we've had a fight this. I feel like this
no
on paper this close.
I love Erin Blanchfield.
She opened at minus 142. Money came in on her quickly up to like 155, then on Fiorot, where she went back down to like 125. But then in the last week, as we got close to this fight date, she has jumped all the way up to 200.
Blanchfield.
Yes.
Wow. I guess if we're talking about that being a result of the actual money coming in, I don't really hate it because my pick is also Erin Blanchfield. We're going to get to that, but I guess I get it.
So, yeah, to the fight. 3 inches of height for Fiorot, but 2 inches of reach for Erin Blanchfield, which I actually did not expect to see. And, yeah, I'm also rolling with Blanchfield here, man. Manon Fiorot is really good. She's given a lot of girls problems. She's probably going to give Blanchfield some problems, especially early in this fight. But it's 25 minutes, and I think Erin Blanchfield is too good to get stuck on the outside all fight long and not figure Manon out. And that's really what Manon manages to do to girls. She forces them to fight her fight. She controls the exchanges. She uses her length and her front kicks to control the range. And I just don't think Erin Blanchfield is a girl you can do that to. We just saw it. It may take her a little bit. She dropped that round 1 to Taila Santos in her last fight. But Erin only knows one direction, and it's forward. And she will press forward if a fight is not going her way until it is going her way. And as this fight goes on and she makes some reads, I think she gets inside on Manon more and more, and I think she can push it even a little recklessly because I don't think Manon is necessarily like a knockout threat. So I think she can, if she's stuck on the outside, I think she can get a little reckless and make it a little bit of a sloppier fight if she needs to get inside. And I think eventually she starts finding more success with the strikes and then goes to work with the wrestling. And I know Manon is a skilled grappler too. You know, her well-roundedness is what's gotten her to this point, but I don't think her grappling is on the level of Erin's grappling. And I think as this fight goes on, just the pressure and the pace from Erin as she figures Manon out more and more, I think will break Manon late. And I'm going to actually say it is a round 5 submission for Erin Blanchfield.
Wow.
That's a great pick. A great description, rather. Omar, you already spilled the beans, so give us your reasoning behind your pick of Blanchfield as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think both of these ladies are absolutely fantastic. I think Fior has shown that she is, like Mark kind of alluded to in his description of her, she's a bully, right? She's definitely one to try and make people uncomfortable in there, walking them down, trying to put pressure on them. But frankly, she a lot of the times is not only the more active fighter in there throwing volume, but also a lot of the times the bigger fighter in there as well, and frankly sometimes the stronger fighter. I think Blanchfield will be a little bit more even keeled when it comes to that specific kind of stat. I think that Blanchfield will also be very strong in there. I think the grappling will definitely be on Erin Blanchfield's time and in her comfort in that fight. And I think when it comes down to it, if they do end up getting into any kind of stand-up exchanges and things like that, I do think that Blanchfield has the ability and the will to take down Manon Fior and change the course of the round and fight, at the end of the day. I think Fior is very good. And just like Mark, I do think that it's going to be a hard-fought fight. I don't think there's any part of this fight that's going to be easy to win. All right. I don't think at any point any one of these ladies are going to be cruising in this fight. But I think the fight gets reckless. I think the fight gets wild. I do think we reach the 5th round, but I don't think we get a knockout. I think we get Erin Blanchfield hitting a rear naked choke at the final moments of the round of round 5. I'm going to go Erin Blanchfield submission round 5.
I cannot believe we both took submission round 5. That's wild.
This is going to be a crazy ass fight. Like, I fully believe this is going to be a crazy ass fight.
Could be. I fully intended on taking Erin Blanchfield partly, at least partly because I'm a fan and I'm rooting for her so hard. This is kind of a heart pick. I honestly thought that she was going to be the betting underdog because Fior is such a beast, to coin a term. Yeah, I really thought that Fior was going to be the favorite. I really did. So I'm picking Blanchfield. But if I was a betting man, and I'm not, and please don't take betting advice from me, but that seems like a really live dog in Manon Fior, man.
What'd I say she was? I know I said Erin was minus 200.
125?
Plus 160. Yeah, it's not bad.
Man. Is this her first time in the UFC being a betting underdog?
Could
this
be.
Is Manon Fior.
It might be, actually.
So also, look, Erin Blanchfield, she provided color commentary at a Warriors Cup last year. So technically I can say that she has been my production broadcast partner. So I'm rolling with my Jersey girl, man. And I think you guys both made very compelling points about the stylistic mismatch that could very well be in favor of Miss Blanchfield. I have a little bit of pause for the size and strength and athleticism of Manon Fior could give Blanchfield quite a handful. I think there is a chance that Fior could be kind of hard to get a hold of and hard to find for Blanchfield, but I'm hoping that Blanchfield can sort of shrink the space between them and crash into Fior enough to get the fight where she needs to be. And I think Blanchfield has a high fight IQ. So I think she knows what she has to do to get this win. And I'll be rooting for her, and I think she can do it, and I think she will. So I will say Blanchfield by UD with a good amount of grappling against the French lady Edmen on Fiorot. And there we have it, folks. You're welcome. A bunch of picks for this coming weekend's UFC Fight Night.
Very nice.
And that's it. We did
Good
it.
work, boys. I'm ready for bed.
Fun one. Good one. Fun one. We'll reconvene next week and talk about next week's fight night as well as how these fights play out from this weekend. Any parting shots, gentlemen?
Learn your Muay Thai. Defend yourselves.
Defend yourselves at all times, guys.
All times.
I got nothing. I've given it everything I have.
Okay. Well, folks, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the fights this weekend. And we'll check in with you next week. Adios.
Peace.